Hey everybody, it's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the St. Vitus basement, and today we are here with Johanna of Lucifer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah. So you have Lucifer II out now. Is this record meant to be a follow-up to the first record? Like, is there similarities in it, or do you think that Lucifer II kind of stands out in its own entity?
Both. It's a continuation, and of course there was a change in lineup between the first and the second album. So it is a whole different anima, but I think when you see us live, we play stuff from the first and the second album. It blends in together. It ends up being the same beast, but with a little bit of a twist in the story.
Now, by having lineup changes and different members, has the newer members allowed you to bring in a newer element into the sound of Lucifer, or did they kind of look at the first record and be like, this is how we are supposed to play?
No, because the original idea for Lucifer was to actually sound way more than Lucifer sounds now. But when I was looking for a co-writing partner and Gaz Jennings joined the band for the first album, it turned out way more doom than I had maybe planned originally for, which was great. I'm very proud of the first album. I love it. But when Gaz left, I thought that's the perfect opportunity to go back to that first initial thought for me of Lucifer, which is like a heavy rock-based band. And Nicke, who I'm writing all the songs with since the second album, agreed with that, and this is, I don't think when the third album is recorded that the leap will be as big as between the first two.
Okay. Now, in order, because I know you mentioned that there is a concept behind the sound of Lucifer, if somebody were to maybe have discovered you on the second record and not the first record, could the listener may have missed something? In order, do you have to like listen to each record chronologically in order to fully?
No, I think you know how it is with music. Sometimes you discover like a random album of a band. Like when I discovered Danzig, it was the third album at first, and then I kind of went back. No, I think the second album, I mean, of course, it approaches maybe a different crowd in a way, but not necessarily. I mean, if you're open-minded to hard rock, heavy metal, and doom, I think you find something on both albums. No rules.
Yeah, excellent. Now, do you need to hear music in order for lyrics to come in, or does sometimes maybe a lyrical concept determine the outcome of the music?
Yeah, but there's so many different approaches, and we had all kinds of cases. Often I scribble down words that come to my head and I put them away. And sometimes the music itself brings something, like I'm demoing vocals by myself, and I'm trying to think, okay, what does this feel like, the song? And then it just something comes out. I have no idea where from, but the lyric starts already to form with the first initial demoing. Sometimes I draw a blank and then I have to go back to my notes and, okay, this one could be about death as well. Or, there's so many different ways to approach the music. Also with the songwriting, we do it in so many different ways. Sometimes Nick and I, we talk about, okay, we could do something that sounds like Uriah Heep, look at yourself, and then we sit down and then it turns into something different. But then he usually, he comes with the music, he writes some riffs and so on. And then I sit down and then I write the lyrics and the vocal melody. But we've had it the other way around too. There's 2 songs on the new album where I gave Nick verse and chorus, and then he wrote the music around it. So
awesome. Now, kind of going back into your lyrics, are you looking internally? Are your lyrics coming from within, from your own mind, or are you looking outwards as a source of inspiration?
No, they're always from my inside. They're actually all very personal, but I do shroud them in metaphors. And sometimes I do tip my hat to something, like in California Sun, you have the Born to be Wild line and the Riders on the Storm. But these are just purposely little hints to things that I like. But generally they're all from within.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you like to leave your lyrics open to interpretation, or are you maybe trying to inform a listener or maybe see things from a similar point of view?
Both. I mean, I like when lyrics are a little bit more vague, so you can kind of make your own sense of it. But I also like songs when I listen to as a music fan to stuff where it's a story that touches me or that I can relate to somehow.
Yeah. It's funny that you take it in metaphors. Can maybe somebody else's perception on your music give you a new perception on it, or do you kind of stand strong behind the
Yeah, no, sometimes it's like I read something like a review, and people take different takes on what certain songs mean, and then, or they sound like something and they have like totally different references sometimes. And then I think that's really interesting. But yeah, I guess it makes sense because one can only compare to what one knows. So, yeah.
And I have two more questions for you. I mean, you've labeled yourselves as like a doom metal band and stuff like that, but, or
I would actually say, I mean, it was always like heavy rock.
yeah.
I think that's the basic consensus or whatever that's called in English. Yeah, the first album, of course, had like a lot of doom in it. Second album has that a little bit, but not so much. I would say it's a heavy rock band.
Yeah.
What I don't understand is when we somehow get the tag stoner, because that has never had anything to do with Lucifer.
Yeah.
I just think it's really funny. I actually hate that word. I'm sorry,
No.
but nothing against people who dig that. It's just, I don't know, it's such a generalization. There's a difference between doom and stoner stuff. And it seems like nowadays everything gets kind of thrown into the same box. But
How do you define stoner metal? Like, I know people who smoke weed to Burzum, and that's not stoner metal at all. So, like,
yeah, that's shit black metal. But yeah, no, Burzum sucks. But then I better listen to some Mayhem, I guess, or Dark Throne. I don't know. I thought the whole stoner thing started with like bands like Caius and so on, Fu Manchu and stuff like that.
I think of Baroness mostly.
Yeah, that's later, I guess. Yeah. See, I don't know so much about that scene, but
And the final question I'd like to ask you is, how do you know when a song is finished?
yeah, it's weird. Mostly, then it just feels like, okay, now the verse and the chorus and the middle eight, that's perfect. That's the arrangement. All the hooks are hooky, and you feel that's done. I've been lucky with Nicke on the second album because that went very fluent. So there was not a lot of thinking. It was just like bam, bam, putting like the puzzle pieces together. I know that there have been other moments in my life, but not with the second Lucifer album, where you're kind of like getting lost, and where it's like, okay, yeah, the verse is great, but for the chorus it takes some more time or something. But usually you just feel it when it's like it comes full circle. Yeah, you kind of set in the last piece in the puzzle. Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. It's going to be an awesome show tonight at St. Vitus. Is there just anything else we could be expecting from Lucifer in the future? Obviously that Architects thing, but anything else?
We will start recording the third album throughout the year. The luxury we have is having our own studio, so we don't have to do it all at once. We can just go whenever we have time. Because it's right on our property, so that's really good. No, we'll be playing a lot. There will be a second leg of the American tour, focusing on the West Coast, and this is happening sometime in summer this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And having your own studio's got to be really good because you're in your own element, so it's got to be easier to write in your own studio, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy and lucky, I think, because we live kind of in the countryside where we don't have to see any people. We have like deers running through the garden, so we can just we don't have regular jobs, Nick and I, so we can just, whenever we feel like, okay, now it's time to record, grab a cup of coffee and go over and work, so that's really awesome.
We don't have that in New York. We don't have any deers here. We have...
Well, outside. I mean, I don't live in the middle of Stockholm. We live a little bit outside. So, but it's a good balance, because I grew up in big cities. I lived in, my whole life in Berlin, and then 3 years in LA and a little bit in London. And I've always had this craving to be out in nature, so it's the best because we get to socialize and party when we go out on tour and to festivals and so on. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Johanna.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, we are here with Johanna of Lucifer. Pick up Lucifer II if you haven't already, and be on the lookout for new stuff coming soon. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.